Hello, welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is John Hopkins, and John is an attorney and founder of Hopkins and Carley, a prominent San Jose law firm. In the estate planning community here, we see John as more than just an attorney. He is our mentor and role model, and I'm really pleased to have him here as my guest today. And so, anyway, I think that you're going to enjoy this show. John has been actively promoting community giving as a family value, and so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I try to fit this show in right around Thanksgiving time to get into that theme. Anyway, I think that John's message is especially appropriate for the holiday season. And remember, of course, we want to keep that giving spirit all year long. And anyway, so he tries to promote that in our community. John, thanks for being my guest today. Glad to have you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, John, you've been promoting the idea of thinking of the community or of charities as one of your children when making your estate plan. So why should I treat the community as one of my children in that process?
Well, the fact of the matter is that if we don't build good communities, whatever we leave to our children is not going to help them a lot. If there aren't community organizations and a good, strong community with values that are promoting and quality of living and all those things, having a lot of money isn't going to help you unless your community is strong.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have a duty, actually, and an opportunity to help our communities and the various organizations that we have. And it's amazing how many there are. There are over 1,000 or so of nonprofit, tax-exempt organizations in this county alone. And they really are the backbone of our community.
Okay. So, I guess, can we expand a little bit? Particularly, I guess I want to plug into this. There's a book that you and I enjoy. It's called The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. So maybe you can talk a little bit about her message. And
yes, Lynn Twist is a writer, and she's been a very successful fundraising for the Hunger Project. And she has promoted through The Soul of Money and other writings this concept of that the money isn't the issue. The issue is your relationship to money. And the best thing that we can leave our children and grandchildren is an opportunity to have and learn to have a healthy relationship with the money. And that's sounds kind of simple, but it's not simple at all. It's those of us that grew up during the Depression were taught to be very, very frugal, and because times were very tough, and our parents, of course, were experiencing this shortage of funds and many people out of work, similar to now, only much, much worse. And so we grew up and we were very frugal. We save everything. The next generation missed that message, and they, at least my children's generation, and their idea was you spend it when you get it, and then it morphed into you spend it even when you don't have it because you borrow it, and which is
kind of a dangerous way to go.
Well, that's a very dangerous way to go, and it reflects that there was a changing relationship with money over those years, and it's very hard to promote this in your children, but that's one of the life lessons.
Yeah.
And
okay. Well, how can you teach these values to your children during your lifetime?
Well, I'm not an expert in teaching all these values. Being a parent is a challenge,
yes,
at best. And but the concept of modeling values, modeling your values, I think is important and does send a message and does impact the children. You think about problems or when you get into mature years, frequently I found myself thinking of what my father had done, what my mother have done. And so that modeling, which the children don't really admit they're learning from, is something that becomes part of them in their future years. And it continues once they're out of the nest and off on their own. Hopefully it's more problematic now than it was a generation or two ago. But what their parents are doing is sending a message of what their values are. And that's why I feel this concept of including the community as one of your children is passing a message down that you value the community. You're demonstrating at your death that you value the community and its needs, and their children they may. I've never heard of anybody saying that children were resentful, but I have heard of a lot of people who have excess money, and I've asked them what their parents did, and they tell me that, well, they gave money to charity, they supported a lot of them, but I don't know what they were. I don't remember
so
my parents ever discussing what they were doing with their community activities. And so that's the part of the program is not just leaving it to the community, but telling the children ahead of time.
Yeah, so if you can, when you are making donations or other things, or if you're involved in community activities, if you can tell your children why and what you're doing, that can be helpful. There's a guy, people have mixed feelings probably about him these days, James Dobson is a psychologist, and his group is called Focus on the Family, and some of his politics maybe some of us don't agree with necessarily, but one of the things that he does tell people related to teaching your kids is that your children catch their values from their parents. So, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important to spend time with them. It has an opportunity then for them to catch some of those things from you.
Well,
okay.
that is true. We do pick up those values, and don't necessarily agree with your parents, but you find yourself doing what they did later on in life because you had that inbreeding, as it was. It's what you do that's important, not so much what you say. And but it's a loss to the children if they don't understand why you've done things. And I think with the best teaching on community organizations is to do site visits, and that's to go and see what they are actually doing, and that's very that speaks very loudly and penetrates all of our defense mechanisms. Oh, they're going to ask me for money if I go there, and blah blah blah. But it's that all dissolves once you see what various community organizations, whether it's arts groups or welfare groups or whatever they are, you can see the people there are so dedicated, and you see you have a feeling of how important they are to the community.
Yeah, you can see the benefits that are happening in the community.
Yeah, right.
Let's see here. So I'll go ahead with my little example in this area. Is years ago I was involved in the San Jose JCs, and so this was, I guess, in the 80s, and so they were just getting the trolleys going. They were doing the rebuilding of the trolleys for San Jose. Part of what they did was they were restoring some of the old trolley cars from back in the turn of the century that were used in various places, with the idea that they would use them. We haven't seen that very much of them in San Jose since we built them, but they have the San Jose Historical Museum. Well, anyway, so some of this work involved things as mundane as sanding down some of the old wood that needed to be refinished. And they had a trolley car master that was overseeing everything. And so anyway, so at least on one or two occasions, I brought my kids down.
Good.
And here, you can help to sand and so forth. Now, and stand inside of this thing, see the work that they're doing, because someday you may see this with your children.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, to have them involved and actually participating, I think it helps to promote, the feeling that you're talking about.
Yeah, well, that's right. You're modeling for them.
Yeah.
And I remember we gave some money to that endeavor back in the 80s, and I agree with you. Those cars never got online. So
I saw a few of them run down a few times, but
Yeah.
I think that they were thinking that they'd be using more. And like I said, I just mostly have seen them out at the San Jose Historic Museum.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I seem to recall you told me that there was an old philosophy about how a family allowance would be used in teaching the lessons of community giving. Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yes, it's been around, I guess, for a long, long time, and the model is that you teach your children to, when you give them money, their allowance or whatever, that 1/3 they use for their own pleasure, and 1/3 they give to charity, and 1/3 they save.
Mm-hmm.
I think the current state of affairs is number one, they use 100% for current use, and the other two are postponed for future, which is the problem of teaching about money. That if they're only, and I'm not saying that I did any better than anybody else with my children, or grandchildren, but it doesn't teach them. It's consume it now, and but the big problem was not only consume it now, borrow money and consume that now, and with no discipline as to how they're going to pay it back.
Yes. Well, anyway, I thought I would remind people about that because there's no reason why we couldn't have that. I remember, though, we had, in a church that I was involved with, the first part of the service was basically like a children's sermon part. In many churches they do that these days. So if they have a Sunday school, the kids may come in and then go back to their Sunday school class, but meanwhile they have a time where the whole congregation is together. And anyway, and a part of that was the tithing part, the collection for the service. That happened during the children's service, and part of that, well, at least, was the mom and dad putting some money into the kid's hand to put into the plate.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, I mean, so that's part of it, but to have the feeling, I don't know if I got this somewhere else or not, but Tony Robbins teaches this anyway. It says it helps to give because you're sending yourself a psychological message that I have enough that I can give.